In 1965, 6 teenagers stole a sailboat and ended up getting shipwrecked on an island for over a year and a half. This is their story. We begin in a place called Tonga, a group of over 170 islands in the Pacific Ocean. Sion, Stephen, Kolo, Mano, Luke, and David were all attending a Catholic boarding school. Tired of their daily routine, they decided to set sail to New Zealand, which is about 1,500 miles away from Tonga. Being teenagers, of course, they didn't have many resources to travel, so they decided to steal a boat and set sail towards their new life. On the first night at sea, while being anchored, a violent storm hit them in the middle of the night, breaking the mooring rope, sail mast, and rudder of the boat. Pretty much all the things that you need to steer and have any direction while at sea. After 8 days of agony, the boys spotted land and decided to swim towards it. The land they found was a remote island called Ata, about 100 miles southwest of their beloved hometown, Tonga. But as we mentioned before, Tonga is a group of over 170 islands grouped together, and only about 36 of them are inhabited. So there's no real reason for anybody to be roaming around in the uninhabited islands. The boys were virtually invisible to the rest of the world. During the first couple months, they survived by fishing and catching seabirds to drink their blood and eat their eggs. One day, Mano and Stephen went out on their daily hunt for seabirds when Stephen slipped on the cliff and fell on a ledge, breaking one of his legs.
We found him on a narrow ledge 40 feet below. His leg was broken.
They treated the injury in Tongan fashion with hot coconut fronds. After 4 months, a scar remained, but he could walk.
And let's be honest, if any of you watching this video got stranded on an island with only the clothes on your back, you would die probably immediately. I mean, look at you. There's no way you're gonna learn how to survive on an island. But luckily, these boys aren't spoiled brats like you are. They came from really poor and close families, so they learned from a very early age that whatever they had, they shared with each other. After regaining some of their strength, they did a little bit of exploring near an extinct volcano and found an abandoned 19th century village with overgrown banana and taro plantations, and even some wild chickens.
Running the fowls down by foot at night became a sport as well as a necessity for living. Eventually, 200 of the hardy game fowls were penned in hutches at the main camp. They were fed on coconut and other scraps. The fowls were eaten only when the storms were too severe for the castaways to obtain birds from the cliffside.
Since they had been taught survival tactics growing up, they knew how to start a fire by rubbing wood together, how to weave waterproof huts to live in, and how to harvest water by tapping into tree trunks. And as many of you are probably going through this world pandemic, you find it really hard to find entertainment one way or another. Living on a remote island is no different. But they did manage to pull together a few things that made it a little more fun. One of the things that they did to keep busy was set up a rustic gym, pretty much a homemade gym made from anything you can think of, and even made a badminton court with homemade rackets. Even one of the boys made a guitar from coconuts and steel wire that they found near the island. Part of the daily routine also included one of the boys keeping a lookout for any ships that might be sailing near the island so they could call for help. Back home, their families were grieving them, thinking that they would never come back. And as a matter of fact, one of the boys' father kept looking around the uninhabited islands from their hometown to see if they might be able to find them. And because there were no results trying to find the boys, they held funeral services for all 6 of them. Now it's 1966, and over a year had gone by since the boys had been shipwrecked in the island of Ata. About 6 miles off the island was an Australian fishing crew led by Captain Peter Warner that was testing out new fishing gear. As the captain and his crew were setting up traps for crayfish, he noticed a small black patch alongside the green grass hills that surrounded the island. He began to think for himself how strange it would be for a fire just to randomly start in a desolate island. As they were sailing around, one of the crew members said that he heard a human voice coming from the island, but Captain Warner just dismissed it because this was supposed to be on an uninhabited island for over 70 years. But as they circled around the island, they saw a brown figure running down the mountain towards them, jump in the water and begin swimming at them. Shortly afterward, he saw 5 other brown figures do the same thing. Now, just like anybody probably would, he freaked out a little bit, just because around that time it was common practice for prisoners to get exiled. He ordered his crew to pull out their rifles and prepare for battle. But then one of the boys, Steven, swam next to the boat and in perfect English said, "Hey, my name is Steven. I am one of the 6 castaways. We think we've been here for over a year and a half." And of course, just like anybody would be, Captain Warner was super skeptical. He didn't really believe them. He just sees like 6 naked kids in his boat and he's like, I don't really know if you guys are prisoners or not. So he calls the operator to verify what they're telling him. 20 minutes later, the operator calls the captain back to verify that all the information the boys were telling him was true. That these in fact were the missing boys that have been mourned for over a year and a half. And of course, upon hearing this great news, Captain Warner takes the boys back home to be reunited with their families.
Along the waterfront, the word was spreading, our boys have come back. Then it was time for laughter and for tears, for smiles and words of endearment as the long heartache eased.
Anyways, that's it for today's video. If you'd like to know more about these kinds of stories, make sure to subscribe. I post a video every single Monday telling you about a wildly interesting story. Peace. I never done that. Would I do that?